They really just want some sensible people to go to St. Paul and get something done. They want...
Well, it's a lot different than 4 years ago when I was introducing myself and people were asking me if I was old enough to vote.
They also talk about health care as an important issue.
On this edition of Democratic Visions, you'll meet 3 remarkable women candidates. First-time candidate Deb Calvert and incumbent Senator Melisa Franzen are seeking election to the state Senate. And Minnetonka's Laurie Pryor is running for the Minnesota House. Here's Tim O'Brien.
Now that summer is winding down, the campaign season is coming up to full throttle. The first important announcement that Laurie Pryor received when she decided to run for the Minnesota legislature was from Democratic incumbent Yvonne Seltzer. Earlier this year, Yvonne told her northern Eden Prairie and southern Minnetonka constituents, that's House District 48A, that she would not seek a third term. Laurie Pryor, longtime Minnetonka resident, told herself now is the time. As a mom and volunteer, Laurie's advocated for better and more affordable health care and schools and multimodal transportation systems. As a past campaigner for Representative Yvonne Seltzer and Maria Rude, Laurie Pryor has visited with thousands of Minnetonka and Eden Prairie residents. And that's what she's going to be doing between now and November. She'll face challenger Mary Shapiro, who won the Republican primary held on August 9, 2016. Laurie, welcome to Democratic Visions.
Thanks for having me here today.
I know you're a first-time candidate, but I also know you've worked exceedingly hard for Yvonne in prior elections that were extremely close. Mm-hmm. What's your takeaway from those close elections that Yvonne went through?
There's a couple things that I've learned from those elections. One is what really matters is talking to people. I mean, we saw all of this money.
Door to door?
Door to door. Door to door and on the phone. Okay. We saw all of this money being spent from the outside. And one of the things that does happen is all of the negative campaigning, it does suppress the vote. People get discouraged, maybe they're not going to vote. So what we did in those previous campaigns and what I will do in this campaign is just keep talking to people, because when you make that face-to-face connection with somebody, mm-hmm. when you listen to them about what's important in their lives, what they think is important in government, what they're hoping for, what they're afraid of, then you know how to be a representative, and they feel encouraged about the process. They feel like they have a voice in the process. They vote, and you're also the one that gets that vote because you're the candidate that was at the door and that showed that you understand them. In our district, when you're at the door and you're talking to somebody, they don't feel like a stranger. I think that's just, our neighborhoods, they're friendly neighborhoods, and the dogs at the door, the cats running out. It's part of the fun part of campaigning.
What do they want to talk about? Is education close to the top?
Yeah, education is close to the top. And ever since I started going door to door as a volunteer with the other candidates, education has always been at or near the top as an issue for people. They also talk about health care as an important issue. People worry about the cost of insurance and health care, why the cost keeps going up, but it doesn't seem that we're getting always better care. This isn't a partisan issue. This is a problem-solving issue.
Well, as you talk to people, I'd like to drop back again to education.
Yep.
What ideas are they most concerned about, or are they what's on their mind relative to education?
Well, of course, it's the whole spectrum of education. Mm-hmm. You start with pre-K, mm-hmm. early childhood, making sure that every child has an opportunity at pre-K learning. You're talking about the K through 12 system and making sure there's a stable funding base for K-12 education and public schools. And then also we're talking about post-secondary, when kids have left high school and maybe they're on a 4-year college track, or maybe they're at Normandale or other kinds of education to follow up past high school. Many of them are struggling right now because of the debt. They've got so much debt that they feel like they don't have choices. And that's what people want. They want a choice of a job, and they don't want to have to feel like they're going to be in debt for the next 20 years, or until it's time to head into retirement and they just finished off their student loans.
It's a major problem, no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. But tell me, what realistically can be done at the state level mm-hmm. relative to either putting a check on the higher cost of post-K-12 education, or perhaps dealing in some fashion with the significant debt? Is there something that the state can do relative, for example, to refinancing?
Right. So, I think those are the 2 points that the state can help out on. First of all, in the past, there was a tuition freeze, and what it meant was that the state was providing more funding for the post-secondary system. And that helped when we had a freeze on tuition. In the last session, that's not something they could get passed. I think in the next session, it's something that we should pursue again, is that freeze on tuition. Then there's also been programs to help students refinance their loans and get better interest rates. I mean, we're seeing lowest rates in history on mortgages.
Yeah, it's almost incredible that there's some obstacle to being able to restructure a student loan.
Right, and to get those historic low interest rates.
What aspects of healthcare do you feel have to be addressed by the Minnesota State Legislature in the upcoming session?
There is a model right now in healthcare where instead of being fee for service, like doing procedures and running tests, it's fee for
You mean the
outcomes.
bill that runs about 2 or 3 pages for every little thing that was done?
All the aspirin and Tylenol and everything they can charge you for.
Right.
And that's how providers are getting paid. Hospitals are getting paid.
Right.
But we can move to a system where hospitals and healthcare systems are getting paid also for keeping people healthy, for keeping people out of the hospital. So it's right now they're looking at things like readmission after hospital stays. A hospital they should be rewarded for not having readmissions, that people leave the hospital ready to heal and ready to be better, and not be in that revolving door where you send them home, they get sick, they're back in again. And those are high costs. So if we can reduce readmissions and do other issues like that where we're keeping people healthy, bringing them back to health, then we're going to lower the cost of healthcare, and we all win because we have a healthier population.
So let's talk briefly about transportation. Southwest Light Rail to run from Eden Prairie downtown to downtown Minneapolis.
Yes.
Are you a proponent of that system?
I am a proponent of that system. Here I will be following Yvonne's lead, and what she's done is she's been the nag. She's taken the lead on this issue, where she is talking to the governor's office. She's talking to her leadership. She's talking to everybody that she can talk to make sure that stays on the radar, that we don't let this slip away. I will take up that issue, and I will make sure that it's front and center, and that nobody forgets about this. And we're seeing, some of the other Republicans that are in districts that would benefit from the light rail are not taking that leadership role. So it's going to be up to who's ever in my seat, and it needs to be me, so that I can follow Yvonne's lead and make sure that we're taking leadership on it.
So I'd like you to step back, if you would, Laurie, and just tell me, what's your vision of House District 49A? What attracts you? Why are you living in this area?
I was out last night door knocking, and I keep going in these neighborhoods, and they're beautiful neighborhoods. Nice, quiet streets, but easy access, parks and schools and mature trees and water features, and all of these things that people really value. And you talk to people, and you say, I'll ask them, how long have you been in your house? And it's like, 53 years.
You're kidding me. I had
16
no idea.
years.
Really?
Yeah, we've been here for 10 years.
Wow.
And it's like, I talked to a young man, 34 years old, that grew up in the house and bought it from his father. People move into this area and they want to stay. For us, my husband and I, it was a great place for us to bring up our 3 kids. They went to the Hopkins Public Schools, they graduated, they got married, they came back to Minnesota, they live in Minneapolis. And I think that's one of the strongest feature of the district that I'm from, and why I would be so proud to represent 48A.
One of the most daunting things about serving in the legislature is when you're elected, you'll be representing 39 to 40,000 people. I mean, that is remarkable.
And I'm going to try to meet all of them, but I don't know.
Well, but my point is, you're not going to be representing 39,000 or 40,000 Democrats.
No.
You're going to be representing Democrats, Republicans, and independents.
Right.
Do you see any difference between those individuals as you go forward in your quest for this office?
Well, certainly you could call out an issue and you would find differences between them. Door after door, person after person, Republican, Democrat, independent. People don't like to see waste, and one waste that we see in the legislature is a waste of time, where they keep working on an issue and then save it till the last minute of the legislature, and then it shuts down without getting passed. Part of that too is the gridlock and the partisanship. They don't want to see that in their representatives, and so I know that my job will to be work across that divide, reach out across the aisle and talk with people. Talk with people that might have slightly different ideas about what's the best outcome, but there'll be things that we agree about, and that's what we focus on.
But I've been watching, or I watched the Republican National Convention, and it's like Armageddon. I mean, the world is falling apart.
Right.
Do you sense that when you're out talking to people, that's the prevailing attitude in your area?
It's not the prevailing attitude. You know, mostly people feel really good about where they are right now, but they have concerns about others. You know, so their lives are safe, they feel happy, they feel secure, but they are concerned about others, and they are concerned about the violence that we see, and they want to see active steps taken, and common sense steps for preventing some of this violence. But even as I say that, there have been a few people that I've talked to where they do feel threatened right now. I feel like, you know, part of my job as a legislator and a candidate for the legislature is when I talk to people, it helps, it does give them that sense of hope and connectedness that when they can talk to someone that's their representative, I think they do feel more secure, and that government isn't just an entity out there doing things to them, but government is part of their lives, and that they have that voice in government.
Well, here's a question that I know you're going to give me the right answer on, but is your campaign comprised of Laurie Pryor type people who are willing to go out there and work as hard for you as you worked for Yvonne?
Right, it is. It is. We have great volunteers that have already been out, and they're amazing. You know, people are coming. They'll
Well, they got to emulate what you've done in the past.
And I think they do me one better. And I'm so honored to have the people involved in my campaign right now.
That's great. Laurie Pryor, thanks for stopping by.
All right.
Best of luck.
All right, thank you, Tim.
Senator Melisa Franzen standing for re-election. The first-term senator lives in Edina and represents all of that city, West Bloomington, and smatterings of Minnetonka and Eden Prairie, Senate District 49. And I'm proud to say that I'm chair of Senate District 49, and I'm prouder to say that we unanimously endorsed Senator Franzen by acclamation for re-election in 2016. So you're coming back to walk the walk for 4 more years. Why'd you do it?
Because my work isn't done. I have just put my tippy toes in the water, and now I have a better sense of what legislature work is like and how to get things done, even though I have been doing things for the last 4 years. And I'd like to continue to represent my district on areas that are important, such as healthcare and transportation and education.
But it's really a hard job, isn't it?
It is. It's hard balancing. It's a part-time legislature, but the expectation is certainly more than that.
You'll remember, I think, that the O'Brien household hosted a soiree 4 years ago for your election efforts back then, and Governor Dayton showed up, then Mayor Ryback showed up, Met Council member Steve Elkins was there, and a host of other luminaries were there to introduce you to the real world of politics, or so we said. So, do you remember that event?
Of course. We have gracious hosts, and certainly very humbled that the governor made it over to Edina to kick off my fundraising and my campaign in 2012, and now move forward to 2016, where we're running a re-election campaign and working with a lot of the same people who gave me support from the very beginning.
Well, there's no doubt but that you are one of the state Senate's rising stars. But you've also become a mother. Philip, probably the cutest kid in the block, I saw last Saturday at our local picnic. But I also know that besides being a senator and besides being a loving mother, that you're working hard to be reelected, and you're going door to door. I know you're going door to door because there's been any number of events set up in that fashion. What are the voters telling you?
Well, it's a lot different than 4 years ago when I was introducing myself and people were asking me if I was old enough to vote. This time
What
around,
did you tell them back then?
Back then I told them Walter Mondale was younger when he got appointed to the Attorney General, so that kind of put the kibosh on that argument. But this year I'm going out and people know that I've been representing them, or at least I can tell them that I've been representing them for the last 4 years, and I have something to show for it.
Well, I know you got a very enthusiastic reception at the Edina 4th of July parade. It's really good to see how people reached out to you. But I want to talk on a more serious vein. You had a condensed 11-week session. You have divided government over in St. Paul, and not everything got done. Are the voters aware of that?
I think so. I think people are paying attention, especially in our district, where we had a tax bill that pretty much got unanimous support by the legislature.
And you
at
supported
least.
that, did
and
you
I
not?
supported that bill and really worked with trying to working families, giving working families tax credits, giving college students some relief. So there were a series of things, and families, child credit, I mentioned that already. So there was a good package of proposals in that bill. But the problem was it had a $100 million mistake, and that couldn't be signed by the governor.
Well, it could be signed and then challenged, I suppose.
Potentially, but we knew that legally that would be a problem. So, so the governor had to veto that. But the bonding bill was something that was left undone. And as you know, every other year is a bonding session. And this year, the priority was to pass a bonding bill, and we couldn't get that done. One of the key components of that was missing was the Southwest Light Rail funding. As you know, that's very timely, and representing a district like mine where it would directly benefit from that project, I could not support a bill without that funding.
I noticed that there was just what I would call a green light from the federal government. The final environmental approval was issued by the federal government, but that's got to be setting the stage for let's get going and start building this thing, isn't it?
Sure, we're trying to really find the right way to fund it from the Minnesota standpoint, but I think if we fail to do that, we're going to lose our turn, and we're potentially jeopardizing future projects and future transportation lines across our state. I think at the end of the day, we all benefit from a good state with good infrastructure. Our businesses, our working families, our seniors, and our millennials. So we have to really make sure that people understand, and legislators as well, that just because you don't personally like a train or you personally don't like a bus doesn't mean that other people don't use them. I personally used the bus every time I worked at Target downtown from Edina, so that was something I took advantage of. If I had the Southwest Light Rail line, I would probably have taken that. I'm door knocking in Bloomington, which doesn't even touch the line, and people are telling me without even me saying anything, please get Southwest done. Why is Southwest not done? Even if you're not on the line, they want these options in the metro area. It's going to help the entire region. It's going to grow over 60,000 jobs along the line, plus the economic return on investment is over $6 as it's been researched so forth. So there is an economic benefit, a positive one for our state and for our region, and we need to remain competitive by having options for our transportation systems. You know, a lot of the metro area sends money to rural Minnesota for their long roads. So we all are in it together, and we need to make sure that we find a way to unite and really find a way to fund these things as a state and look at it as a big picture.
So I know that it was reported that you and certain other senators had more or less made a pact that you weren't going to vote for a transportation funding that did not include the Southwest Light Rail. Is that, did I state that correctly?
Well, I wouldn't say a pact, but we made a statement that this is so important to our region of the state that we will stand together and really leverage our political capital and political power to make sure it gets done. Certainly other areas of a state need other infrastructure investments, and we support them too, but we are advocating for something that we want for our districts and our areas, but that would help the state as a whole.
And I'm sure you're aware that our representative, Ron Earhart, is of the mind that to pass a bill, including funding for light rail transit, you have to put together a package that has elements that satisfy the needs, certain of the needs of outstate Minnesota, as well as the metropolitan necessity to embark
Absolutely.
upon light rail transit. And I assume that that's the same philosophy you would follow?
Absolutely. We were both serving on the Transportation Conference Committee, so our district was well represented. Ron Earhart on the House side, I was sitting on the
Soon
Senate
to be,
side.
we hope, majority transportation leadership.
That would be great. That would be fantastic.
We can turn this divided government over this election, can't we?
We sure hope to. You know, transportation did not used to be so partisan. It used to be something that we all acknowledged as a state role, as a government role to fund roads and bridges. Sometimes people tell me, well, a train should be able to be able to fund itself or be able to be self-sustaining. We have a dedicated tax that goes straight to roads and bridges. That's how we pay for it. So
Exactly.
this is the role of government. This is the essence of what we need to do and our responsibility. So we need to find a way to get it done. And we actually had a bipartisan compromise in that conference committee to get transportation dollars for all modes, bicycle, pedestrian, I mean, all of it. And it just got stuck with the House leadership. There was certainly too much partisanship in some levels that are really blocking progress.
Melisa, I'm sort of a wonk on government and the legislature in particular, and I'm not going to bore you to death, but there are two things that I'd like to ask you about. One is we have a budget surplus. What would you do with that budget surplus if you had your druthers?
Well, you have to be prudent with tax dollars, so I would see what would be the most prudent thing that our constituents and our taxpayers would want us to do. We know we spend a lot of money in government in different buckets, and that our priorities for our state, like education and health and human services, and certainly we say that we don't have enough funding for certain things like transportation. So I would try to figure out, prioritize where is it that we can make the biggest headway. For instance, in health and human services, where can we have dollars that can be a better return on investment for taxpayers, and certainly in the preventive side, we can save money for the state if we make certain investments. So if I had a surplus, I would probably look in ways that I can end up saving the state money and freeing up some funding, depending where you focus the resources. So
the other thing I want to ask you about is Sophia's Law. I know it's something that was near and dear to your heart. Tell our viewers what that entails.
So Sophia's Law unfortunately came from a tragic accident involving one of our constituents in Edina, Sophia Beckler. The Becklers were out on a sunny October weekend day on a Sunday to enjoy their boat on Lake Minnetonka, and unfortunately Sophia succumbed to carbon monoxide poisoning and perished. There were 5 kids on that boat, 4 adults. It could have been a bigger tragedy. Both parents were doctors and couldn't do a thing to save Sophia. They came to, I went to the funeral and among so many other community members in Edina, and both parents on separate occasions said to me, we have to do something to prevent this tragedy from happening to any other family. So quickly went back and researched, are there any other states with a law that would deal with this issue? We realized that there was nothing.
Really?
And ended up working with the national...
I bet there will be more laws like this.
I think so. I ended up working with DNR and working with the national boating associations to really figure out how can we tackle this issue.
I asked him if he'd check on Sophia when he went down the steps. It had been about 7 minutes since she was on the deck of the boat. The next thing I heard was Ben screaming Sophia and carrying our lifeless baby girl.
A lot of the new boats come with the carbon monoxide detectors anyway. This was targeting cabins and enclosed accommodations, so it's not just an open boat. Certainly carbon monoxide can still linger in open boat settings, but we wanted to tackle this particular issue, and a little simple regulation, if you will, a little simple step of just having a carbon monoxide detector could save your life because it can give you time to get treatment. Once it's too late, you can't go to a hyperbaric chamber like HCMC has to get treatment. And that was what happened with Sophia. She didn't have time to get the treatment she needed.
Well, it is a tragedy.
And we're the first state in the country with this law now, so other states are looking at us now, and certainly it received some national attention. So I'm very proud of that, but I'm also proud of the parents who took their sorrow public to make this happen.
Well, Melisa, it's been great having you serve as our senator, and I know that you're going to serve as our senator for at least 4 more years and longer if you want to. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you, Tim. It's been a pleasure.
People everywhere face the same issues, and they want pragmatic leadership at the state legislature to solve those issues. I sit in traffic on the way to and from work. That's the economy sitting with me on I-94. We need a modern infrastructure and modern transportation system to keep our economy moving. And I find it at door after door. Student loan debt is holding back a whole generation from moving forward. The achievement gap is particularly stark in our state, and we really do need to have a rising tide to lift all boats and make sure that all of our children have a chance of success. One of the things that I learned from working for Senator Klobuchar is the importance of civil discourse and good governance, and I think I can take that to St. Paul.
Deb Calvert is running for the Minnesota Senate seat presently held by our friend Terry Bonhoeff. In April, when Senator Bonhoeff announced that she would not seek re-election from Senate District 44, that's Woodland, Northern Minnetonka, and Southern Plymouth, and that she would instead challenge Eric Paulson's bid to return to Washington for another term, the question thus arose: who would be the best individual to replace independent-minded DFLer Terry Bonhoeff in the state Senate? The answer became clear: Deb Calvert. Your Senate district is not comprised by any means of 100% Democrats.
No.
It's Democrats, Republicans, and independents.
Yes.
What common issues do you think all of those groups of people have that you could address when you're sitting over in the legislature servicing your Senate district?
I think we all have the same issues, and I think that's what makes this an exciting thing to do. Education is something that is important to everyone. Traffic is important to everyone. I think our water resources, our green spaces, the environment is important to people on both sides of the aisle. And caring for our most vulnerable. Everybody cares about their parents, everybody cares about their children, and so those are things that we all agree on.
What are you hearing from your future constituents out there?
They really just want some sensible people to go to St. Paul and get something done. They want civil discourse. They want good governance. They want bipartisan cooperation to finish session on time and solve the problems that we all have. And it's across the board, and there really isn't much disagreement on that.
So let's talk a bit about Deb Calvert. Viewers should know that Deb's Calvert world includes her husband, Waldo, a home in Minnetonka, 2 adult children, the violin, the Minnetonka Planning Commission, U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar, many campaign teams, the Hopkins School District, and the Mitchell-Hamlin School of Law. Have I summed it up correctly?
Pretty much, yes, absolutely.
Deb,
Yes.
stuck in traffic on 94. All you're trying to do is get from your home out in Minnetonka over to Ramsey
Yes.
County, and it's gridlocked. I mean, not all the time, but it's often enough. So what can be done? We've got roads and bridges that have to be repaired and replaced. We only have so much money to do that. What's the solution? Is there a solution?
Well, there are solutions. I think we need a multimodal approach to this very complex issue, but we did have $270 million of surplus tax revenue that wasn't expected. Perhaps we should be applying some of that to address the billions of dollars of need that we have in road and bridge maintenance and construction. The other thing that I think I can bring to it is the approach that I take on the Minnetonka Planning Commission, which is really to look at each mechanism on its merits, each proposal on its merits, and make my decision based on that. I think there are many, many different ways that we can go. Taking money out of the general fund is one way that people have been proposing, but if we do that, then we have to take a good hard look at what we are not going to be funding. Most of our funds go to education, so our children, and health and human services, so the care of our elderly, and nobody wants to cut those things.
Well, Deb, everybody that runs for the
Everyone.
legislature says, I'm going to work across the aisle. And Terry Bonham did it, I think, relatively successfully.
Yes.
Do you think you'll be able to emulate her in that regard?
I do, and I think one of the things that we have in common is we're very straightforward, and we don't pull any punches. We say what we mean, and we mean what we say, and I think that is really important so that people know who they're dealing with.
You know, is it really right that the state takes on?
She's a really hard worker, as is Amy Klobuchar, both some of the hardest working people I've ever met in my life, and that is a quality that I have. I have one of the strongest work ethics of anyone I know, and I think people appreciate someone who will put the work in and not phone it in, and that would be me.
So I'm sort of intrigued by that one part of your background that says you were a violin instructor,
Yeah.
a teacher. How long did you do that?
I did that for many years, 15 years. I teach a method that teaches that every child can learn, that anyone can learn, and it's not necessarily something that that's innate, and it really has to do with the work that you put in, the quality of work that you put in to succeed at music and create some beauty.
So you're a 13-year resident of Minnetonka.
Yes.
Give us a snapshot.
Well, I have to say that there are many worse things that you can do than to go door knocking in the western suburbs. It is beautiful. The mature trees, the water resources, the creeks, the wetlands, the ponds, the lakes. The schools are wonderful. The people are reasonable. I mean, I knock on so many doors and everybody is polite. Everybody's nice. Everybody wants to hear what you have to say and they want to be heard, and it's very nice to live in a place where people are reasonable. The amenities are just a short walk or drive away. Those are the things that people want to preserve, and those are things that I can work on for everyone. You couldn't ask for a better place to live, really.
Deb, It sounds to me like you fit the district to a T. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Democratic Visions is handcrafted by volunteers from Eden Prairie, Hopkins, Minnetonka, Edina, and Bloomington. Watch us on select cable systems and on our YouTube channel. This is Carol Sundstrom.